Welcome back again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Let's talk about Gervonta Tank Davis, because as you obviously know, he scored his signature win, best win of his career against Ryan Garcia on Saturday. Did it with a body shot in 7 rounds, looked extremely good doing it, and at 28 years old is probably in his prime. So the obvious question is, what's next for Tank? Now, when I say he's in his prime, I mean, I've always been the type of person who looks at Tank and thinks that guy's got some real talent, but is he going to utilise it? As with most of the sort of PBC Mayweather influenced fighters, the Al Heyman lot, they don't fight enough. And I thought that Davis was in danger of sort of not making the most of his peak years, because I don't, to be honest with you, even though he's got 29 wins with 27 KOs, no defeats and no draws, I think he could have actually done a lot more with his career. I think he's taken the sort of a few shortcuts to pick up belts. He hasn't fought major names before. He fought Ryan, who himself was pretty much untested, and a good fighter, Ryan, don't get me wrong, but Tank, to me, really put it all together. I thought he might be one of these Broner types, who pisses his talent away, or a lot of it, and collects belts and makes a few quid, but doesn't really fight the main guys in each division. And he's got his out-of-the-ring activities, hasn't he? His problems with the law and so on. He's got a case coming up soon. But he really put it all together against Ryan for me. At last we saw, the talent that this kid has. And like I say, at 28, he's got to be in his prime. So, looking at Tank, what makes him so good a fighter? Well, I think, to be honest with you, I think that he's one of those rare fighters with the skill to make being small an advantage. And a lot of people have said to me, because Tank is like 5'5", 5'6", and he's fighting in the lightweight division. It's not tall for a lightweight. He's been up at light welter. People say, oh yeah, he's like a little Mike Tyson. I wouldn't use that comparison. I much prefer the comparison to Dwight Muhammad Cowie, or Dwight Braxton as he originally was, who fought at light heavyweight, went up and won a cruiserweight belt, and actually picked up a few paychecks at heavyweight towards the end of his career. Even fought George Foreman. A ridiculous size difference between Foreman and Cowie. Cowie was about 5'7". Foreman was, 6'5", something like that. But as a light heavyweight, he was short. 5'7" is not tall for a light heavyweight. But he had the ability to make himself even smaller, so the taller fighters, especially the much taller fighters, would have difficulty seeing where the punches were coming from. And Cowie used to, if you want a perfect example, watch the first Holyfield fight, which was, he gave Holyfield, who himself was inexperienced, I think it was only about his 11th pro fight, but he gave Holyfield living hell for 15 rounds. It was an old 15-rounder. And a big part of that was the fact that he utilised that short stature, that sort of low centre of gravity, and sprang forward with punches when Holyfield couldn't really see them. They weren't in his periphery vision, almost, a lot of them. So Tank is good at that, and you add that to a very, very high ring IQ, that instinct of knowing what punches to throw when, and even when he's under the cosh, as he was early in the second round against Ryan Garcia, who came out in a very cavalier manner and started trying to ragdoll Tank, and Tank was grabbing and holding and trying to wrestle his way through it, and then. But of course, if you're going to be a cavalier fighter, you're going to throw a lot of punches. Inevitably, you're going to show off certain rhythms and certain patterns. And if a guy's got a high ring IQ, he can read those patterns and those tactics and knows when to punch. Tank has that instinctive ability to do that. Very, very impressed with him against Garcia. I really was. Well, the question is, of course, who's he going to fight next? And the obvious choice, if he stays at lightweight, and I think he should stay at lightweight. I think if he stays dedicated, he can really make a splash at lightweight, because he can make the weight. He's 5'5", 5'6", whatever it is, 5'5.5", whatever it is. He can make that weight. He can make that weight. if he stays disciplined. And of course, it's all a question of, is he going to do that? To be a professional boxer, you should really be professional when you're not fighting. You're in between bouts, when you haven't got something lined up. It shouldn't be a case of sitting on the sofa eating ice cream and then when a fight's announced, you get into camp and lose a ton of weight. That's the sort of Riddick Bowe recipe to throwing away a lot of your talent. All right, again, Adrian Broner would be another good example. But if Tank stays at lightweight, the obvious fight for him is the winner of Devin Haney and Vasyl Lomachenko. I think that would be a really good matchup. I actually think Haney might beat Lomachenko. But here's the thing, the old styles make fights thing. I think Tank would have more problems with Lomachenko than he would with Haney, even though Haney's very tall, because I think Tank can time those taller guys. And Haney, I've got a lot of time for Haney, going to Australia twice and beating Kambosos. He showed he's made of the real stuff. And big up Kambosos for beating Lopez and then taking on Haney immediately. He didn't duck anyone. I like Kambosos a lot. But Haney and Tank, I think Tank, although Haney, I wouldn't rule out Haney winning, I would make Tank the favourite in that fight. I think he'd be able to time, to work out and time Haney's rhythm. He'd have problems with him, no doubt about it. But I just think he's over 12 rounds. I think he might catch up with Haney. Whereas Lomachenko, a shorter man, and a man who isn't really a lightweight, and a smaller man, certainly smaller man than Tank, a guy who's really just a super featherweight. I think being a shorter guy and being extremely crafty and extremely skillful and having a very, very high ring IQ, as Loma does, okay, there's a question mark over Loma because at what point of his career is he at? Is he still the Loma that we all admired, or has he slipped drastically? Well, I think Loma gives Tank problems, some serious problems. And I'm not saying Tank won't win, but my impression is it would be an easier fight against easier fight against Loma than Haney. But at the same time, I think if Loma has slipped slightly, Haney would probably win on points. Maybe a close fight, but that's my immediate reaction. So there's that fight. If Tank decides to move up to 140, well, there's the winner of Taylor versus Lopez, which would be an interesting proposition. Both Lopez and Taylor are coming off bad performances. In my opinion, Taylor was clearly beaten by Catterall, and I just view that as a defeat for Taylor. And Lopez was definitely beaten up as well as beaten by Kambosos. Taylor hasn't fought since the Catterall loss, as far as I'm concerned, whereas Lopez has, but he was floored by Sander Martin, and he wasn't convincing at all. So they've both got something to prove, and the winner of that fight, going in there with Tank. If Tank moves back up to 140, he can. It's an interesting fight, I think, especially if Taylor struggles with the weight. I mean, Haney could struggle with the weight at lightweight, definitely. When making predictions, I tend to sort of assume that people are going to make the weight okay, because that's a sort of intangible that you can't really get your head around unless you've got inside information. So that would be a good fight. Tank and the winner of Lopez and Taylor. But I'll tell you the fight I really, really want to see, the one that excites me the most out of all the fights I've mentioned, is Gervonta Tank Davis and Shakur Steveson. Because Steveson, I know he's come up through the weights, but he's so talented, so sharp, so cold-blooded and cool-headed and cold-blooded. Him against Tank, what a meeting of talents that would be. I would love to see that fight. And he's mouthing off Steveson as he always does. He's a young kid, brash. And I think he's a different ball game to Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia has got some skills. He hits hard. He's slick, but he stands too upright. And he, like I said before, he fights. He fights in repetitious rhythms, so you can read him. With Steveson, he is far more economical and patient. But if he thinks he's got someone in front of him he can hurt, he'll go after them. So he's got that sort of blend of aggression mixed in with a bit of nous, a bit of savvy there. I think that would be a brilliant fight. Shakur Stevenson and Tank. What a great fight that would be. That's the one I want to see the most. And of course, Tank, you'd think would be physically stronger, but maybe Stevenson has grown into got his man strength, grown into the lightweight division. You just don't know. He'll probably have a fight, even if he was to fight Tank. I don't think it'll be the next fight. I think he'll probably, have another at least 1 or 2 fights before they made that fight. But I really want to see that one. Shakur Stevenson and Tank Davis. What a great fight that would be. Anyway, that's just a few thoughts on the future of Tank Davis. You leave your comments below. Let me know what you think, what your opinions are. And I'll read them as always and answer. If I don't answer your comment, don't think I ain't read it. I'll read all the comments. I just don't have time to answer all of them. But I do appreciate you leaving your thoughts down there. That's what makes the channel great. Subscribe if you're new. Spread the word about Joe's Son of Boxing. Hit the like button if you like the video. And please tell all your mates, subscribe to the channel. It takes a second to just hit that subscribe button. Please do it. We want to build the channel up. And thanks for your time as always. We'll speak again soon. And of course, bye for now.